The alarm bells rang across the command deck of the U.E. Defiance. Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the center of the bridge, watching the red dots appear on his screen. The Zephyrian ships had come out of nowhere, just like they always did. 3 major Alliance worlds were under attack at the same time. How many ships? Jake asked his communications officer. 200 Zephyrian vessels, sir. They hit Kepler Prime, New Boston, and Harmony Station all at once. Jake nodded. This was big, but not the biggest fight he had seen. The humans had been fighting the Zephyrians for 10 years now. They knew how these blue-skinned aliens thought and fought. The Zephyrians were strong and had good ships, but they always made the same mistakes. Send word to all human fleets. We move in 1 hour. Jake turned to his tactical officer. Get me Commander Banks on the ground. Lisa Banks appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Jake could see smoke and explosions. She was already on Kepler Prime, leading the defense of the main city. Her face was dirty and she looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. Jake, good to see you. We need air support down here. The Zephyrians landed about 50,000 troops in the capital district. Help is coming, Lisa. Hold your position. Jake had worked with Lisa for 8 years. She was one of the best ground commanders in the Alliance military. If anyone could hold a city against bad odds, it was her. The humans had a way of making impossible things look easy. Across the galaxy, human ships were moving into action. Captain Ryan Torres commanded the heavy cruiser Hughes Valiant. His ship was older than most, but his crew knew how to make it work better than any new vessel. They had fought together in 23 battles and never lost one. Captain, we have new orders coming in on the secure channel, his communications officer said. Doc Ryan frowned. During battle, all orders came through the main fleet network. The secure channel was only used for very special messages. He walked over to the communication station and put on the headset. The message was short and in code. Ryan had to read it 3 times to believe what he was seeing. He looked around the bridge at his crew. These people had served with him for years. They trusted him completely. Sir, is everything all right? Asked Lieutenant Amy Foster, his tactical officer. Continue with the current mission, Ryan said. I need to think about something. The battle for Kepler Prime was going well. Human fighters were cutting through Zephyrian ships like they were made of paper. The alien pilots were good, but humans had something different. They could think of new ideas in the middle of a fight. When their main weapons broke, they used mining tools. When their ships were damaged, they turned them into bombs. On the ground, Lisa Banks was proving why humans were feared across the galaxy. Her troops had taken an old shopping center and turned it into a fortress. The Zephyrians kept attacking the same way, and humans kept finding new ways to stop them. Lisa, this is Admiral Morrison. How are things down there? We are winning, Jake. The Zephyrians are pulling back from the city center. Give us 6 more hours, and we will have them running back to their ships. But Jake was looking at something else on his screen. More secure messages were coming in. Every human commander was getting the same orders. Finish the current fight, then report to special meeting points. No questions. No delays. Dr. Emma Wright was not in the battle. She was on the Alliance Science Station near Earth, working on her research. Emma studied alien life forms for the Alliance government. Her job was to understand how different species could work together better, but lately her work had changed. Alliance officials were asking her strange questions about human DNA. They wanted to know why humans were so good at fighting. They asked about human brain structure and how humans learned so fast. Emma had started to worry. The questions were getting more detailed. Yesterday, a group of Altarian scientists had asked her to provide samples of human genetic material. They said it was for medical research, but Emma did not believe them. She sent a coded message to her old friend Jake Morrison. The message was simple. They are studying us like lab animals. Back in the battle zone, the Zephyrians were losing badly. Their main fleet was trying to escape, but human ships were faster and smarter. Captain Torres watched his screen as enemy vessels exploded one after another. "Sir, should we pursue the fleeing ships?" asked Lieutenant Foster. Ryan looked at the secure message again. His orders were clear. Win this battle, then leave. He had served the Alliance for 15 years. He had bled for them, lost friends for them, but now they wanted him to abandon everything and disappear. Negative, let them go. All ships form up for departure. "Sir, we could destroy their entire fleet if we chase them now. Our mission here is complete. We are leaving." Admiral Morrison was having the same conversation on the Defiance. His officers could not understand why they were stopping the attack. The Zephyrians were broken and running. This was the time to finish them completely. "Admiral, the Alliance. Command is asking why we are not pursuing," said his communications officer. "Tell them we have accomplished our objectives. All human ships are returning to base." But they were not returning to any Alliance base. The secret orders had given them new coordinates, places that were not on any Alliance star map. As Jake gave the order to jump to hyperspace, he wondered if he would ever see Alliance space again. All across the battle zone, human ships were disappearing, not running away in fear, but leaving quietly like ghosts in the night. They finished their fights first, made sure their alien allies were safe, then vanished into empty space. Commander Lisa Banks got her own message just as the last Zephyrian troops surrendered. She looked at her soldiers, good men and women who had followed her through hell. In 2 hours, they would all be gone, and the Alliance would never know where they went. "Pack everything up," she told her troops. "We are going home." "Home to Earth, Commander?" "No," Lisa said, looking up at the stars. "Home to somewhere new." The Alliance had no idea what was coming. In a few hours, every human in their military would be gone. 60 million people vanished without a trace. They would leave behind their equipment and their bases, but take something much more important. They would take their knowledge, their skills, and their unwillingness to become anyone's experiment. The Alliance was about to learn what happened when you lost the people who had been holding your civilization together. 3 months had passed since the humans disappeared. Admiral Korath of the Altarian Republic stood in his command center, staring at reports that made no sense. The Alliance was losing battles they should have won easily. Enemy fleets that humans used to destroy in hours were now defeating entire Alliance squadrons. "Show me the Vega Station battle again," Korath said to his aide. The hologram appeared in front of him. Alliance ships outnumbered the Zephyrian attackers 2-1. They had better weapons and stronger shields, but they lost anyway. Korath watched the same mistakes happen over and over. Alliance commanders followed their training perfectly, but perfect training was not enough anymore. "Sir, Commander Thax is requesting permission to retreat from the Rigel system," his communications officer reported. "Retreat? We sent 3 full fleets to Rigel. How can they need to retreat? The Zephyrians are using new tactics, sir. Our commanders cannot predict what they will do next." Korath felt sick. The new tactics were not really new. They were the same things humans had been doing for years. The difference was that Alliance officers had never learned to think like humans. They had always depended on human commanders to handle the difficult situations. On the other side of the galaxy, General Carl Henderson was watching the same battles. But he was not in an Alliance command center anymore. He was on Haven Prime, a world that did not exist on any official star map. This was where humanity had gone when they left the Alliance. Carl had been one of the last humans to leave Alliance. Space. His job was to train Alliance officers in basic human military tactics. He had spent 2 weeks trying to teach them how to think differently during a fight. The key is to never do what your enemy expects, Carl had told a room full of alien officers. When your main gun breaks, find another way to fight. When your ship is damaged, turn it into a weapon. When you are outnumbered, use that against them. The alien officers had written down every word. They made detailed notes and asked good questions. But Carl knew they did not really understand. To them, these were just new rules to follow. They did not see that the real lesson was to stop following rules when the rules were not working. No, Carl watched as those same officers tried to copy human tactics without understanding them. In the Battle of Proxima III, an Alliance commander had tried to ram his damaged ship into an enemy vessel. It was something humans did all the time. But the Alliance officer had announced his intention first, giving the enemy time to move away. A human would have just done it. President Helen Carter was also watching the news from the Alliance. She sat in her office on Terra Nova, the new capital of the human colonial union. The decision to leave had not been easy, but the discovery of Project Prometheus had made it necessary. Project Prometheus was a secret Alliance program. They had been studying human DNA, trying to understand why humans were so good at war. The plan was to create new soldiers using human genetic material. Soldiers that would be stronger and smarter than regular humans, but completely loyal to the Alliance government. They wanted to make us into their personal weapons, Helen said to her aide. Super soldiers that they could control completely. The Alliance Council is still sending messages, Madam President. They want to negotiate. Let them send messages. We are not answering. Helen looked out her window at the new city being built below. Humans were good at starting over. They had done it many times in their history. This time, they would build something better than what they had left behind. Back in Alliance space, the problems were getting worse every day. Trade routes that humans had protected were now full of pirates. Stations that humans had built and maintained were breaking down. Diplomatic relationships that human ambassadors had carefully managed were falling apart. Commander Pete Sullivan was monitoring Alliance communications from his stealth ship, the U.E.S. Shadow. He felt guilty watching Proxima Colony burn. He had friends there, aliens who had fought beside him in many battles. But his orders were clear. Stay hidden and gather information. Captain, the Colony Defense Force is requesting assistance. His communications officer said, negative. We maintain radio silence. Pete watched as the colony fell to Zephyrian raiders. The Defense Force fought bravely, but they were using old tactics that did not work anymore. They set up defensive lines and waited for the enemy to attack. A human commander would have taken the fight to the enemy first. The Alliance Council was meeting in emergency session every day now. Counselor Vex of the Centaurian Federation was trying to convince the others to swallow their pride and ask the humans to return. We need them back, Vex said to the council. Whatever we did to drive them away, we can fix it. The humans left without explanation, replied Counselor Zara of the Betelgeuse Compact. They abandoned their duties and their allies. Why should we beg them to return? Because we are losing this war without them, Vex answered. Look at the reports. Every battle, every engagement. We are fighting like we did 30 years ago, before the humans taught us better ways. But the humans were not answering any calls. Every attempt to contact human leadership met with silence. They had covered their tracks well, disappearing into uncharted space where Alliance sensors could not reach them. Major Kate Rodriguez was leading a reconnaissance mission near the old human sectors. Her job was to watch Alliance forces and see how they were adapting to life without humans. The results were not good. Kate watched as Alliance forces tried to retake New Gibraltar, a strategic world that controlled 3 important trade routes. The planet had strong defenses that the Zephyrians had built up over months. Alliance commanders had 200 ships and 50,000 troops. It should have been an easy victory, but the assault lasted 3 days and failed completely. Alliance. Ships attacked the same defensive positions over and over, using the same tactics each time. They followed their battle plans perfectly, but the plans were not working. When their first attack failed, they tried the same attack again with more ships. A human force would have taken that planet in 6 hours, Kate said to her tactical. Officer, how would they have done it differently, Major? They would have ignored the main defenses and attacked the power stations instead. Cut off the electricity and the defensive guns stop working. And land troops at the weakest point, not the strongest. Kate had seen humans do exactly that on 12 different worlds. Alliance officers had watched those battles and learned the techniques, but they had learned them as separate tricks, not as examples of a different way of thinking. On Altair Prime, civilian populations were starting to riot. The power grids that human technicians had optimized were failing. The atmospheric processors that human engineers had redesigned were producing dangerous gases. Essential services were breaking down all across Alliance space. Dr. Amanda Foster was the former Alliance chief of Xenorchaeology. Now she worked on the research vessel UES Discovery, studying artifacts from ancient civilizations. She was looking for clues about other species that had disappeared from the galaxy long ago. It is strange, Amanda told her research team. We are studying vanished civilizations while being part of one that chose to vanish. Do you think the Alliance will survive without us? Asked her assistant. They will survive, Amanda said. But they will have to learn to do things differently. The question is whether they can learn fast enough. The Alliance was running out of time. Intelligence reports showed that the Zephyrians were building up for a massive attack on the core worlds. Without human forces to provide the decisive edge, the war might already be lost, but humanity was not coming back. They had made their choice and were building a new future far from Alliance space. The galaxy would have to learn to survive without the people who had been holding it together for 30 years. 6 months after the humans left, entire star systems were surrendering without a fight. The Zephyrian war machine had grown bold and confident. They knew their most dangerous enemies were gone, so they had tripled the size of their invasion force. What used to be careful raids had become a massive conquest. Fleet Admiral Korath stood in the Situation Room on New Geneva, looking at a map of Alliance space. Red markers showed Zephyrian-controlled systems. There were too many red markers now. Every week, more worlds fell or simply gave up. Proxima Colony has surrendered, reported his intelligence officer. They did not even try to fight. How many ships did the Zephyrians send? 12 light cruisers, sir. The colony had enough defensive platforms to destroy 50 ships that size. Korath closed his eyes. 12 ships would never have been enough to take Proxima Colony when humans were still around. A single human patrol would have destroyed that invasion force before breakfast. But now, the colony leaders had looked at those 12 ships and decided that resistance was hopeless. Commander Pete Sullivan was still watching. From his stealth ship, he had strict orders not to interfere, but it was getting harder every day. These aliens had been his friends and allies for 15 years. Watching them lose battles they should win made him feel sick. Sir, Proxima Colony is burning, his sensor. Officer reported. Pete could see the smoke clouds from orbit. The Zephyrians were not just conquering worlds anymore. They were destroying them to send a message. Any world that might think about fighting back could see what happened to those who resisted. Captain, should we at least send a warning about the Raider fleet heading to Centauri Station? Negative. We maintain our cover. But Pete was already thinking about his friends on Centauri Station. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blake had served. with him on 3 different ships. She was a good officer and a better friend. Now she was going to die because Pete could not warn her about the attack coming her way. The Alliance Council was meeting again in emergency session. Counselor Vex looked around the table at representatives from 12 different species. 6 months ago, this council had controlled 300 star systems and commanded the respect of half the galaxy. Now they were a group of frightened politicians, watching their civilization collapse. "We must contact the humans," Vex said for the 100th time. "Whatever price they want, we pay it." "We have tried everything," replied Counselor Zara. "We sent messages to every human colony we know about. We offered them complete autonomy, their own territory, anything they wanted. They do not answer. Then we find them, send ships to search the outer rim." "With what ships?" asked Counselor Kren of the Vegan Assembly. "Half our fleet is destroyed. The other half is spread across 100 worlds, trying to hold the line against Zephyrian attacks." The truth was that the Alliance had no idea where humanity had gone. Human ships had jumped to coordinates that were not on any star map. They had vanished into the unknown regions beyond the galactic rim, where space was dark and empty and full of dangers that no one wanted to face. Major Kate Rodriguez was leading another reconnaissance mission, this time near the Rigel system. Her orders were to observe Alliance tactics and report on their effectiveness. It was not a pleasant job. Every battle was a lesson in how not to fight a war. She watched as Alliance forces tried to break the Zephyrian blockade of Rigel Prime. The Alliance had assembled their largest fleet in months, 80 ships from 6 different species. The Zephyrian defenders had only 30 vessels, but they were positioned perfectly to control the space around the planet. "This should be easy," Kate said to her tactical officer. 80 ships against 30, with the attackers having better technology. "How would humans handle this situation, Major?" "Send 20 ships around the backside of the planet to attack their supply depot. While the Zephyrians are distracted, the main fleet breaks through the weakest part of their line. The whole battle would be over in 2 hours." But the Alliance commanders were not thinking like that. They divided their 80 ships into 4 equal groups and attacked the Zephyrian fleet head-on from 4 directions. It was a perfectly balanced and completely predictable assault. The Zephyrians saw it coming from hours away and were ready for it. The battle lasted 8 hours and ended in complete defeat for the Alliance. They lost 37 ships and gained nothing. The Zephyrian commander had used exactly the tactics that humans would have used against such a predictable attack. On Altair Prime, the capital world of the Alliance, civilian riots were getting worse. Essential services that humans had built and maintained were failing all across the planet. The power grid was producing brownouts every day. The water purification system was contaminating drinking supplies. The atmospheric processors were filling the air with toxic gases. "We need human technicians," said the planetary governor to his emergency council. "Our people do not know how to fix these systems." "The humans left detailed manuals," replied his chief engineer. "The manuals are written in human technical language. We can follow the instructions, but we do not understand why they work. When something goes wrong that is not in the manual, we are helpless." This was the real problem. Humans had not just provided military strength to the Alliance. They had been the engineers, the problem solvers, the people who made impossible things work. Other species could copy human designs, but they could not think like humans when those designs needed to be changed. Dr. Amanda Foster was working in her laboratory on the research vessel UES Discovery. She was studying artifacts from the Forerunner civilization, an ancient species that had vanished from the galaxy 50,000 years ago. The irony was not lost on her. She was trying to understand a vanished species while being part of one that had chosen to vanish. "Doctor, "We are receiving a transmission from Alliance Space," her communications officer reported. "Is it directed at us specifically?" "No, ma'am. It is a general broadcast to any human vessels that might be listening." Amanda walked to the communication station and listened to the message. It was from Dr. Sarah Mitchell, her former colleague and friend. Sarah was begging any humans who might hear her to come back and help save the Alliance worlds. "Amanda, if you are out there, please answer. Altair Prime is dying. The atmospheric processors you designed are failing, and we cannot fix them. Millions of people will die if we cannot get them working again." Amanda turned off the transmission. She wanted to help Sarah, but her orders were clear. Humanity had made their choice to leave, and there would be no going back. The Alliance had betrayed their trust, and trust was not something humans gave twice. General Carl Henderson was monitoring the same. Transmission from Haven Prime. He had trained Sarah Mitchell personally when she first joined the Alliance Science Corps. She was a good person who had never been part of Project Prometheus or any other plot against humanity. "Sir, should we respond?" asked his aide. "No. The Alliance leadership made their decision when they started Project Prometheus. They wanted to turn us into their personal weapons. Now they have to live with the consequences." But Carl felt the weight of those consequences every day. Intelligence reports showed that Alliance worlds were falling faster than anyone had predicted. The Zephyrians were not just winning battles. They were winning so easily that other enemy species were joining the attack. Pirates, raiders, and hostile alien empires were all moving against Alliance territory. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting a massive Zephyrian fleet buildup near the core worlds," his intelligence officer reported. "How massive?" "Over 600. Ships, sir, including their new Titan-class dreadnoughts." Carl looked at the tactical display. The Zephyrians were preparing for a final assault on the Alliance capital worlds. If that attack succeeded, the Galactic Trade Alliance would cease to exist. Billions of innocent civilians would die or become slaves. "Sir, what are our orders?" Carl stared at the display for a long time. Humanity had left the Alliance to protect themselves from becoming weapons. But now they faced a choice between their own safety and the lives of entire civilizations. "Continue monitoring. Report any changes immediately." "Yes, sir." "Should we prepare the fleet for possible deployment?" "No. Our orders are to stay hidden and protect human colonies. The Alliance must fight this battle themselves." But Carl knew they could not win. Without human tactical expertise and human willingness to sacrifice for victory, the Alliance fleet would be destroyed in hours. The Zephyrians had learned to fight. Like humans, while the Alliance had forgotten how. The final battle was coming, and humanity would watch from the shadows as their former friends faced extinction. It was the price of betrayal, but it was also the price of being human in a galaxy that wanted to use them rather than trust them. 9 months after humanity disappeared, the Alliance prepared for their last battle. Intelligence reports confirmed what everyone feared. A massive Zephyrian fleet was moving toward the core worlds. Over 600 ships, including the new Titan class. Dreadnoughts that could crack planets in half. Fleet Admiral Korath stood on the bridge of the dreadnought and stalwart, looking at his tactical display. 200 ships from 12 different species floated in formation around him. This was all that remained of the once mighty Alliance fleet. Everything else had been destroyed or was too damaged to fight. "Admiral, the Zephyrian fleet will arrive." "In 6 hours," his tactical officer reported. "How many ships did our scouts count?" 643, sir, including 12 Titan-class dreadnoughts." Korath felt his stomach sink. His 200 ships against 600. The odds were bad enough, but the Titan-class ships made it hopeless. Each one was larger than 3 Alliance dreadnoughts combined, with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. He thought about Commander Alex Turner. the human officer who had taught him everything he knew about fleet tactics. Alex would have found a way to win this battle. He would have looked at those impossible odds and seen an opportunity instead of a death sentence. All ships. This is Admiral Korath. Today we fight for the survival of our civilization. We may be outnumbered, but we are not outmatched in courage or determination. It was a good speech, but Korath knew it was not enough. Courage could not overcome such terrible odds. The Alliance needed a miracle, and miracles were something humans had provided. Now they were on their own. The Zephyrian armada dropped out of hyperspace like a storm cloud. 643 vessels in perfect formation, their blue hulls gleaming in the light of New Geneva's star. At their center were the 12 Titan ships, each one bristling with enough weapons to destroy a solar system. All Alliance ships. This is Admiral Vex of the Zephyrian Confederacy, came the transmission. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will make your worlds burn for 1,000 years. This is Admiral Korath of the Galactic Trade Alliance. Our answer is no. The battle began badly for the Alliance. Zephyrian fighters swarmed around their ships like angry insects. The Titan dreadnoughts opened fire with their planet-killer weapons, and Alliance vessels began exploding before they could even return fire. But something strange started to happen. The Alliance crews, facing total extinction, began thinking differently. Captain Jex of the Rigelian cruiser Moonbeam was watching his shields fail under enemy fire. His ship was going to die in minutes unless he did something unexpected. Jex remembered a story that Commander Turner had told him about a human ship that had defeated 3 enemy vessels using nothing but mining equipment. The human captain had turned his cargo bay into a weapon by launching rocks at high speed. Launch all cargo containers, Jex ordered. Sir, we are carrying agricultural supplies for the colonies. Launch them anyway. Maximum velocity, spread pattern. The containers, filled with grain seeds, scattered across space in front of the attacking Zephyrian fighters. The small ships flew through the cloud at high speed, and their sensors went blind. Grain seeds stuck to their hull plates and jammed their weapon systems. 3 Zephyrian squadrons crashed into each other because they could not see where they were going. Commander Yila of the Altarian destroyer Swift Justice was facing 2 Zephyrian heavy cruisers. Her ship was damaged and outgunned. In normal circumstances, she would have retreated according to standard tactical doctrine. But these were not normal circumstances. Yila remembered watching human ships ram enemy vessels when they had no other choice. It was not something Altarians usually did. Their culture valued careful planning and avoiding unnecessary risks. But humanity had taught them that sometimes the only way to survive was to take the biggest risk possible. All hands prepare for ramming speed, Yila announced. Her crew looked at her in shock. Ramming was a human tactic, not something that civilized species did. But they followed orders. The Swift Justice accelerated directly toward the larger Zephyrian ship, firing every weapon at maximum power. The Zephyrian captain tried to evade, but it was too late. The Swift Justice slammed into the enemy cruiser's engine section, and both ships exploded in a ball of fire. But the explosion took out the second Zephyrian cruiser as well, saving 2 Alliance carriers that were trapped behind them. On Haven Prime, General Tony Brooks was monitoring the battle through long-range sensors. He watched the Alliance fleet fight with desperate courage, using tactics they had learned from humans over the years. They were fighting better than they had in months, but it was not going to be enough. Sir, the Alliance is taking heavy casualties, his intelligence officer reported. How many ships have they lost? 67 destroyed, 41 severely damaged. The Zephyrians have lost only 23 ships. Tony felt sick watching his former allies die. These were good people fighting for their homes and families. They did not deserve to be slaughtered because their leaders had made stupid decisions 9 months ago. Sir, should we contact President Carter? The Alliance fleet will be destroyed in 2 hours. Negative. Our orders are clear. We stay hidden and protect human colonies. But Tony was already thinking about those orders. President Carter had said they would not interfere in galactic politics. But was it politics when an entire civilization was about to be wiped out? When billions of innocent people would die or become slaves? Back in the battle, Admiral Korth was running out of options. His fleet was down to 130 ships, and the Zephyrian Titans were moving in for the final attack. Their planet-killer weapons were charging up, preparing to bombard New Geneva itself. Sir, we should evacuate the government to the outer colonies, suggested his aide. No, we make our stand here. Korth opened a channel to all remaining Alliance ships. All vessels, this is your final order. We go down fighting. Make every shot count. Make them remember that the Alliance did not die quietly. The surviving Alliance ships formed a desperate defensive line around New Geneva. They knew they were going to die, but they would sell their lives as dearly as possible. It was something humans had taught them. When you cannot win, make sure your enemy pays a terrible price for victory. On the hidden world of Terra Nova, President Helen Carter was watching the same battle. Her intelligence service had managed to tap into Alliance communications so she could hear everything that was happening. The desperate voices of ship captains, the calm orders of Admiral Korth, the screams of dying crews. Madam President, the Alliance fleet will be destroyed. Within the hour, her aide reported, I can see that. Should we reconsider our position? If the Zephyrians win, they will control half the galaxy. Helen stared at the tactical display. The Zephyrian Titans were moving into bombardment position around New Geneva. In a few minutes, they would begin firing on the planet itself. 50 billion civilians would die in the first hour. Get me General Brooks on secure communication. Yes, ma'am. Tony's face appeared on her screen. Behind him, she could see the controlled chaos of a military command center preparing for action. Tony, what is the status of our fleet? All ships are ready for deployment, Madam President. We can be in Alliance space in 4 hours. The Alliance will be dead in 1 hour. Yes, ma'am. I am aware of that. Helen looked at the display again. The Zephyrian Titans were beginning their bombardment of New Geneva. Massive energy beams were striking the planet's surface, vaporizing entire cities. This was not conquest anymore. This was genocide. Tony, how fast can we get there if we use the experimental hyperspace drives? 30 minutes, ma'am. But those drives are still untested. We could lose ships. How many ships would we lose in normal hyperspace? All of them, ma'am. The Alliance will be gone before we arrive. Helen closed her eyes and thought about the choice in front of her. Humanity had left the Alliance to protect themselves from being turned into weapons. But now they had to choose between their own safety and watching genocide happen in front of them. Tony, prep the fleet for immediate deployment. Experimental drives, maximum speed. Ma'am, are you sure? If we reveal ourselves, the Alliance will know where we are. They might try to force us back into service. Let them try. Sometimes being human means doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything. Tony smiled for the first time in months. Yes, ma'am. All ships, prepare for emergency hyperspace jump. We are going back to war. The sensors on Admiral Korth's flagship detected something impossible. A massive hyperspace signature was forming behind the Zephyrian fleet, larger than anything in recorded history. 300 human warships materialized out of nowhere. Led by the massive dreadnought U.E.S. Retribution. Captain Greg Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking at the tactical display. The Alliance fleet was almost destroyed. New Geneva was burning under bombardment from Zephyrian Titan ships. Billions of people were dying while he watched. "Captain, we have a clear shot at the Zephyrian command ship," his tactical officer reported. "Open a channel to their flagship first." Greg's image appeared on screens throughout the Zephyrian fleet. His voice was calm and conversational, like he was discussing the weather instead of threatening a war fleet. "This is Captain Mitchell of the Human Colonial Navy. You have exactly 30 seconds to begin withdrawing from Alliance space, or we will consider your continued presence an act of war against humanity." Admiral Vex of the Zephyrian Confederacy laughed at the transmission. "Humans, we thought you had run away like cowards. 30 seconds? We will destroy you in 3 minutes." "Your choice," Greg replied, and closed the channel. The Zephyrian response was predictable. Every ship in their fleet opened fire on the human vessels at the same time. Thousands of energy beams and missiles filled space between the two fleets. It was enough firepower to destroy a solar system. But the human ships moved like they were dancing instead of fighting. They had been preparing for this battle for 9 months, studying Zephyrian tactics and developing new weapons. The aliens had forgotten something important about humans. They learned from every fight, and they never made the same mistake twice. Admiral Nancy Clark commanded the carrier U.E. Sioktown. Her fighter squadrons launched in perfect formation, each pilot knowing exactly what to do. These were not the same pilots who had fought for the Alliance. These were veterans of conflicts that the galaxy had never heard of, battles fought in the dark space beyond the rim where humanity had been preparing for this moment. All squadrons engage at will. Target their weak points. The human fighters moved through the Zephyrian formations like sharks through schools of fish. Their weapons found critical systems that Alliance computers had never been able to identify. Engine cores exploded, command bridges went dark, and weapon systems failed all across the enemy fleet. "How are they doing this?" Admiral Vex demanded of his tactical officer. "Unknown, sir. Their targeting is impossible. They are hitting systems that our sensors say do not exist." What the Zephyrians did not know was that humanity had spent 9 months taking apart captured enemy ships. They had studied every circuit, every power relay, every structural weakness. When humans went to war, they did not just fight with weapons. They fought with knowledge. Captain Ryan Torres, now commanding the heavy cruiser Hughes Valiant, led his squadron against one of the Titan-class dreadnoughts. The massive ship was 3 times larger than his entire squadron combined, with enough firepower to destroy planets. But size was not everything in space combat. All ships, attack pattern. Delta 7. Target the power coupling between sections 4 and 5. "Sir, that coupling is inside their armor plating. Our weapons cannot reach it. They can if we make our own entrance." Ryan's ships spread out around the Titan ship like hunters surrounding prey. They fired at the same spot on the hull with precise timing, each shot weakening the armor until it cracked open. Then the Valiant fired a single torpedo through the gap, straight into the power coupling. The Titan-class dreadnought lost power to half its weapon systems. It was still dangerous, but no longer unstoppable. Across the battlefield, human squadrons were doing the same thing to other enemy vessels. They were not trying to destroy the Zephyrian fleet quickly. They were taking it apart, piece by piece. Admiral Korth watched the battle from his damaged flagship, unable to believe what he was seeing. The humans were fighting with a precision and coordination that seemed almost supernatural. Their ships moved together like they shared the same mind, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. "Sir, the Zephyrian fleet is retreating," his tactical officer reported. "Retreating? They outnumber the humans 2 to 1. "Yes, sir. But they have lost over half their ships in 20 minutes. Korth looked at his tactical display. The red dots, representing Zephyrian vessels, were disappearing one by one. The few remaining ships were trying to escape to hyperspace, but human fighters were hunting them down like wounded animals. General Tony Brooks was coordinating the battle from his command ship, the UES Discovery. He felt a grim satisfaction watching the Zephyrian fleet die. These aliens had spent months terrorizing innocent civilians and destroying Alliance worlds. Now they were learning what happened when they fought an enemy that refused to lose. "Sir, the remaining Zephyrian ships are requesting surrender," his communications officer reported. "Denied. They had their chance to withdraw peacefully." "Sir, some of those ships have civilian refugees aboard." Tony paused. The Zephyrians had been taking prisoners from conquered worlds, using them as slaves and hostages. Those people did not deserve to die for their captors' crimes. Allow ships carrying prisoners to surrender. Destroy the rest. In 25 minutes, the most powerful invasion fleet in galactic history was reduced to burning debris. A few Zephyrian ships carrying civilian prisoners were allowed to surrender, but the rest were destroyed completely. Not a single human vessel was lost. Admiral Korath received a transmission from Captain Mitchell. The human's face appeared on his screen, still calm and professional, despite the massive battle that had just ended. "Admiral, this is a one-time intervention. The Alliance chose to betray our trust, and we will not forget that. But we will not stand by and watch genocide either. Consider this our farewell gift. Captain Mitchell, please. We need to talk. The Alliance has made mistakes, but we can fix them. The time for talking is over, Admiral. You had 9 months to contact us. You chose not to until you were desperate." The transmission ended, leaving Korath staring at a blank screen. Around New Geneva, the human fleet was already preparing to depart. They had appeared like ghosts, saved the Alliance from total destruction, and now they were vanishing again. President Helen Carter's image appeared on screens throughout Alliance space. Her message was broadcast on every frequency, translated into every major language. It was simple and direct, with no room for misunderstanding. The Human Colonial Union wishes the Galactic Trade Alliance well in their future endeavors. However, we will no longer be participating in galactic politics. Any attempt to locate our colonies or interfere with human affairs will be considered an act of war. The transmission ended with coordinates to a dead-drop location near the edge of Alliance space. Intelligence officers who investigated the location found detailed files about other threats to galactic security. Information about rogue artificial intelligences, dark matter entities, and worse things lurking in the void between stars. It was humanity's final gift to their former allies, the knowledge they would need to survive without human protection. The files contained everything the Alliance needed to know about threats they had never imagined. Threats that humans had been fighting in secret, while the Alliance worried about politics and power. Commander Lisa Banks was one of the last humans to leave Alliance space. She commanded a small squadron tasked with making sure all human personnel and equipment were safely evacuated. As her ships jumped to hyperspace, she looked back at the Alliance worlds one last time. "Will we ever see them again?" asked her tactical officer. "Maybe, if they learn to stand on their own without trying to turn us into weapons." "Do you think they can do it?" Lisa thought about the Alliance crews she had watched fight desperately to save their civilization. They had courage and determination. What they lacked was the willingness to think differently when the old ways were not working. They will have to learn. We cannot protect them forever. As the last human ship vanished into hyperspace, the Alliance was left to contemplate a sobering truth. They had possessed the galaxy's most powerful military force, most innovative scientists, and most skilled diplomats. And they had driven them away through fear and betrayal. In the months that followed, the Alliance would rebuild. They would learn to fight their own battles, solve their own problems, and face their own demons. Some worlds would fall before they learned these lessons. Some battles would be lost that humans could have won easily, but they would survive, and eventually they would grow stronger. The Zephyrian threat was broken, and other enemies would think twice before attacking Alliance space. The galaxy had been reminded that the Alliance, even without humans, was not defenseless. On Terra Nova, President Carter stood in her office, looking out at the stars. Humanity had chosen exile to maintain their freedom, but they had not abandoned their principles. When genocide threatened, they had acted. When innocent people needed protection, they had provided it. Madam President, the fleet reports all personnel successfully evacuated, her aide announced. Good. Any word from Alliance space? They are still sending messages now. Requests for negotiation, offers of territory and autonomy. Continue to ignore them. We have made our position clear. Helen turned away from the window.